So we'll sort of share a little bit about who we are, say a little bit about what we've learned from what we've been doing, and thirdly set out this proposition that you referenced around a potential graduate scheme for community workers, community organisers. If we begin with this bit about who we are and what we do, I'm going to caveat all of what I'm about to say with this one fundamental belief, which is that is on the next slide, which is from Margaret Wheatley, which is all of our workers and organisations built on a fundamental principle that we do believe that actually we can change the world if we actually start listening to each other a little bit more than perhaps what we do ordinarily. And actually the fact that the foundation of our work is the formation of good quality relationships at a local level between people, which actually have become slightly broken and fractured recently. So what we have across the country is, as an organisation, we work with grassroots local organisations to support them to do this thing which is called community organising. We've got a wide breadth and depth of work, and increasingly in the last sort of few months we've been supported to develop our work further in both the North East and West Midlands. So we work with another sort of 15 or so organisations. And our work is built around these three, what we call core pillars of community organising. So if you want to get out there and work with people on the ground, then there needs to be three core elements. There needs to be some training actually to the people who we're working with. You need a supportive infrastructure that's going to be the social glue between all those people that are active in communities. And thirdly, they need to take action on issues, because the only way that you can learn is by putting it into practice. And so what is this organising thing that sits as a foundation for what we've been talking about, this new programme? Well, ultimately, it's a process which enables people to come together to take action on things they care about. And actually, so often in many places, people will say, and I'll share this in a minute, but actually, people around here just don't do that stuff. People just don't get involved. And I think there's a reason for that. But actually, the work of this kind of organisers, community practitioners, call them what you will, is an active process of going out there and starting these conversations with people to unearth the things that people care about and actually start to bring them together to do something about it. And we built it around a very simple framework, which is that. It's about how do you get out there, listen, have conversations, bring them together, support people to develop their leadership potential. I'll touch on that in a minute. And then develop local strategies that can take action on the things that can bring about those changes that they want to see. So what lessons have we learned? Well, actually, that where you have somebody doing this type of work, actually people will pull together to improve their neighbourhoods more. And that was from an effort Ipsos Mori evaluation of the work back in 2015. And actually, in those places where community organisers are active, people do feel a stronger sense of connection and belonging to their neighbourhood, because actually you've got people out there galvanise people to think carefully and practically about what they can do in their place to improve things for themselves. And, what lessons have we learned? Well, the lessons that we've learned have been captured in policy papers over time, and some of those things are set out there: the civil society strategy, the insecurity community strategy, the green paper, and the ties that bind us. And I think what you can see in all of those aspects is that if anybody is going to do anything in many of these places that have been identified, resources have to go to the people and the places directly, rather than through some large intermediary, which might, actually it's about getting money into the people and supporting those people to do the things that they want to do. So where is our proposition for Community First coming from? Well, if you think about that framework, the core of that community organising is this belief that change comes about from developing what is often like a latent leadership potential in places. And in organising world, we talk about building a culture of possibility in place and with people, because actually, if you can do that, then people will genuinely bring about the changes that they want to see. Why? Because actually, when you go to these places, so often when people will tell you, and what you often hear is very simple things. We put those things on, no one turns up, nobody around here cares about anything, no one listens to us, what's the point? It's always the same people doing stuff. All of that stuff is not true. Well, it is true, it's valid because they tell you it, but actually fundamentally it's about challenging that, because actually one of the reasons why people feel powerless to affect change and nobody out there is doing the work to galvanise people and get them together and to start to take ownership and responsibilities for the things that they want to see in their places. So delighted to be able to work with Professor Tim Luckhurst at South College Durham to conceive this idea around a graduate programme And why is it important? Well, first of all, I think it's actually a practical solution to delivering community work in many of these places, and being upfront, there is a workforce challenge. There's not enough people out there doing this work, primarily because it's a career sacrifice. If you go and talk to people, why would they want to go and do this? I mean, perhaps if they're a graduate, they could go on and earn plenty more money doing other things. So we want to create community development as a career aspiration rather than a career sacrifice. And actually, if this is the case, then actually, if we can get a network of people, a program of people doing this work, then actually it's going to bring about some long-term community capacity building work that's necessary in areas where actually it is much, much needed. And, you know, if you want an example of how this could and should look, then if we look at North Birkenhead Development Trust in the Wirral, you've got a fantastic person there called Eve Barrett, who leads and runs that organisation. Eve went to Oxford. She did a fantastic well at Oxford, but then decided to go back to the Wirral to run North Birkenhead Development Trust, and is doing great work. I was in Shildon in County Durham on Friday, and I met with somebody called Sam, who's one of the community development workers at Children Alive, a Durham graduate. And actually, you know, these people are going back to the communities that they came from, because actually they can see there's meaningful career opportunities in those places. And in all of those places, you can see that, you know, a good quality education is having on raising aspirations and realising the potential in those places. So I think, you know, actually, in areas such as these areas which we've talked about, there needs to be something which puts in place the capacity and the infrastructure to enable people to go into those places, who are from those places, who understand those places, who benefited from, you know, good education, but can then go back to actually harnessing the skills of local people and the talents of local people to bring about the changes. And just some final reflections, I think, you know, if something like this was to be established, what we do know is that grassroots local organisations are crucial in doing this work, that actually there needs to be a mechanism for effective listening. It goes back to what I said at the beginning, to create some conditions so that people can realise their potential. And finally, actually effective mechanisms need to be established to support people to develop their leadership potential, because if we look at it, there is intersecting crises that people are facing right now, and actually we need to ensure people are appropriately supported to develop their resilience to bring about changes in those places.
Thank you. Excellent. Professor, do you want to say anything? Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. The reason that Nick and I began to work together was that when I met Nick, actually through this all-party parliamentary group, it coalesced for me instantly two competing priorities, which had existed for quite a while for my new college. One was to find a way to get graduates to go and do socially useful work, which they really, really wanted to do, but in which they could see no career prospect for graduates. And the other was to help the left behind neighbourhoods, which Nick has been helping for a long time, and which I've encountered throughout the Coalfield communities in Durham. And there are many students at Durham University who would love to go and facilitate, to work with communities, to embed themselves in left behind neighbourhoods, and to work as a cohort of graduate community organisers trained with the skills that Nick has been training people to use throughout their lives, to work in genuine partnership with local people, to give something back. But there needs to be for them a career route that gives it some recognition. And I looked at previous graduate schemes and realised that they were a model which could be applied. Teach First is a starting point. Others have done well as well. You can get really bright young people to go back to the communities from which they've come, to work in communities they recognise as similar to the ones in which they grew up, and to work as facilitators. They recognise that they're not leaders. They are people who bring graduate skills and put them at the service of the community. I think they can be enormously valuable, and I know there are a lot of people in South College who would love to do it. So it was a dream project for me, and one which can give so much back to parts of the country which urgently and desperately needed.